Around 500 BC, the Greek city-states stood at the zenith of their cultural and economic power. Their colonies, scattered like jewels across the Mediterranean, thrived on the wealth generated by vast trading networks. The Greeks, masters of the sea, built a legacy of prosperity that seemed unshakable. Yet, on the horizon, a storm was brewing, one that would threaten to sweep away everything they had achieved. To the east, the Persian Empire loomed like a colossus. Stretching from the Middle East to parts of Africa, it was a military superpower ruled by Emperor Darius, a man whose ambition knew no bounds. The Persians, with their vast armies and unyielding hegemony, cast a long shadow over the Greek world. It was only a matter of time before their gaze turned westward, toward the flourishing Greek colonies in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. The Greek cities in Asia Minor, though proud and independent, were no match for the Persian juggernaut. One by one they fell, their freedom extinguished, as they were forced to pay tribute to Darius. This was not merely a conquest, it was a calculated strategy. By weakening the Greek cities in Asia, the Persians aimed to dominate the entire region, leaving no room for resistance. The fall of Byzantium, a strategic city that controlled access to the Black Sea, marked a turning point. With its capture, the Persians opened the gates to the entire region, solidifying their control. To further undermine the Greeks, the Persians granted trading privileges to the Phoenicians, the Greeks' longtime rivals. This move struck at the heart of Greek prosperity, as trade was the lifeblood of their economy. The wealthy city of Miletus, which relied heavily on sea trade, was particularly affected. The Greeks watched in dismay as their influence waned, their colonies stripped of autonomy, and their wealth siphoned away. The Persian Empire's strategy was clear: total subjugation. The Greek city-states, once proud and independent, now faced an existential threat. The age of prosperity was over. The age of conflict had begun. The Greeks, though resilient, knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril. The Persian threat was not just a challenge to their wealth and power, it was a challenge to their very way of life. The Persian Empire, under the iron rule of Emperor Darius, was not content with mere conquest. Its strategy was calculated, ruthless, and aimed at total domination. After subjugating the Greek colonies in Asia Minor, the Persians turned their attention to undermining the very foundations of Greek prosperity. Their plan was as cunning as it was devastating. The fall of Byzantium, a strategic city that controlled access to the Black Sea, was a masterstroke. With its capture, the Persians opened the gates to the entire region, solidifying their control. But they did not stop there. To further weaken the Greeks, the Persians granted trading privileges to the Phoenicians, the Greeks' longtime rivals. This move struck at the heart of Greek prosperity, as trade was the lifeblood of their economy. The Phoenicians, now favored by the Persians, began to dominate the Mediterranean trade routes, leaving the Greeks struggling to maintain their influence. The wealthy city of Miletus, which relied heavily on sea trade, was particularly affected. Once a bustling hub of commerce, it now faced economic ruin. The Greeks watched in dismay as their wealth was siphoned away, their influence waning with each passing day. The Persian strategy was clear. By crippling the Greek economy, they could ensure total subjugation. The Greeks, however, were not passive victims. Discontent simmered among the city-states, fueled by a growing sense of injustice. The Persians' actions were not just an attack on their wealth, they were an affront to their pride and independence. The Greeks, though divided, began to realize that they could not stand idly by. The Persian threat was not just a challenge to their prosperity, it was a challenge to their very way of life. In Miletus, the discontent was palpable. The city, once a beacon of Greek culture and wealth, now faced an uncertain future. Its leaders knew that they could not rely on the Persians for mercy. They had to act, and quickly. The Greeks, though outnumbered and outmatched, were determined to resist. The Persian strategy had ignited a spark of defiance, one that would soon grow into a flame of rebellion. The stage was set for a clash of empires, a battle that would determine the fate of the Greek world. The flames of rebellion ignited in 499 BC, as the Greek cities of Asia Minor, suffocating under Persian domination, finally snapped. Miletus, once a glittering beacon of maritime wealth, now stood at the brink of ruin. Its leaders, desperate and defiant, sent urgent pleas for aid to the Hellenic polis across the Aegean. But pride and fear divided the Greeks. Many city-states, paralyzed by the specter of Persian retribution, turned away. Only Athens, driven by a mix of solidarity and self-interest, answered the call, sending half its formidable naval fleet, 20 triremes slicing through the waves toward certain chaos. The allied Greek forces, though outnumbered, struck first. Rallying under a banner of desperation, they marched inland to Sardis, the glittering regional capital of Persia's Anatolian satrapy. The city, unprepared for such audacity, fell swiftly, but victory bred recklessness. As Persian defenders retreated to the citadel, the rebels descended into frenzy, looting palaces and temples. Then, whether by accident or design, flames erupted. Fire consumed Sardis, its markets, its grand halls, even the temple of Cybele, revered by Persians and Greeks alike. The inferno lit the night sky, a signal of defiance visible for miles. When news reached Emperor Darius, his rage was volcanic. Legend claims he ordered a servant to whisper, "Remember the Athenians," thrice daily during meals, lest his wrath cool. He vowed to reduce the rebels to ash. A colossal army assembled a sea of spears and shields, while shipyards across Phoenicia and Egypt hammered day and night, birthing a fleet of over 600 warships. The Persians advanced like a tempest, their army reclaiming lost territories village by village, while their navy, a forest of sails, bore down on Miletus. The Greeks scrambled to defend the rebellion's heart. Near the island of Lade, their fleet gathered 350 triremes, outnumbered but elite, their crews hardened by decades of Aegean rivalry. The Persians, though superior in numbers, hesitated. Bloodying their navy in battle risked destabilizing their empire. Yet diplomacy failed, and the two forces collided. As dawn broke, the Greeks launched their attack, exploiting their ships' agility to flank the Persian line. For a moment, victory seemed possible. Then betrayal struck. 60 Samian ships promised clemency and Persian gold, abruptly raised enemy colors and fled. Panic rippled through the Greek ranks. Ships scattered, formations shattered. The Persians, seizing the chaos, closed in like wolves. Athenian triremes fought fiercely, their rams splintering hulls, but the odds were insurmountable. By dusk, the sea ran red. The rebellion dissolved. Persian troops stormed Miletus, slaughtering men, enslaving women and children, and razing the city to dust. Darius's vengeance was absolute. Yet even as Persian banners fluttered over the ashes, the emperor's gaze turned westward. Athens, that defiant spark, had escaped his fist, but not for long. The stage was set for a war that would echo through eternity. The waters off the island of Lade churned with tension in 494 BC, as the Greek rebel fleet, 350 warships strong, faced the sprawling Persian armada, over 600 vessels crowding the horizon. The Greeks, though outnumbered, clung to hope. Their triremes were faster, their crews battle-hardened by decades of rivalry in the Aegean. Yet the Persians, masters of empire, held a darker advantage. They knew how to exploit division. Days earlier, the Persian commanders had tried to avoid battle. A bloody naval clash risked crippling their fleet, the backbone of their maritime dominance. They offered pardons, bribes, whispered promises, anything to fracture Greek unity. Most cities resisted, but the Samians, calculating survival over honor, secretly negotiated. The Persians vowed to spare Samos if its ships abandoned the fight. The deal was struck in shadows. When the fleets finally met, the Greeks formed a defensive line, their prows bristling like teeth. The Persians advanced cautiously, their ships heavier, slower. For a moment, the Greeks seemed poised to defy the odds. Then, as trumpets blared and oars dipped, betrayal struck. 60 Samian triremes, nearly a fifth of the Greek force, suddenly veered away, sails snapping as they fled. Panic erupted. The Chian and Lesbian squadrons, seeing the gap, wavered. Some ships broke formation to chase the traitors. Others stalled, paralyzed by confusion. The Persians seized the chaos. Their fleet surged forward, encircling the disorganized Greeks. Athenian triremes, crews roaring, slashed through the Persian line, rams splintering hulls. But for every ship they sank, 3 more closed in. The Chians fought savagely, their decks slick with blood, yet the tide was unstoppable. One by one, Greek ships were pinned, boarded, burned. By dusk, The sea was a graveyard of shattered timbers and drowned men. Survivors limped home, their resolve as broken as their fleets. The Persians, victorious, turned their fury on Miletus. The city's walls, once unyielding, crumbled under siege. Streets ran red as Persian soldiers slaughtered defenders, dragging women and children into chains. Temples were desecrated, markets smoldered. Darius ordered Miletus erased, its survivors marched to Babylon, its name stricken from records. The other rebel cities, leaderless and terrified, surrendered without a fight. Yet the Persian emperor's wrath was not sated. The Athenians, who had dared to aid the revolt, remained unpunished. Darius, clutching the ashes of Miletus, swore an oath. Greece itself would burn. The Battle of Lade was not an end, but a prologue. The Persians now controlled the seas, the cities of Asia knelt in submission, and the drums of war began to echo westward, toward Athens. The fall of Miletus was not merely a defeat, it was an annihilation. The once vibrant city, whose ships had once ruled the Aegean, lay in smoldering ruins, its streets choked with ash and blood. Persian soldiers, methodical in their brutality, dragged surviving citizens into chains, their wails echoing across the silent harbor. Men were slaughtered in public squares. Women and children, stripped of dignity, were marched eastward to Babylon, their futures reduced to dust. The temples of Miletus, once thrumming with offerings to Greek gods, were defiled, their altars shattered. Emperor Darius had demanded an example, and the Persians delivered. Miletus was erased, its name stricken from records, its memory cursed to fade. With the rebellion's heart extinguished, the remaining Greek cities in Asia Minor capitulated. One by one, they opened their gates, their leaders prostrating before Persian satraps, pledging eternal loyalty. The Phoenicians, now unchallenged in trade, prowled the Mediterranean like wolves, their sails emblazoned with the crest of Persian favor. The Aegean, once a Greek lake, became a highway for imperial ambition. Darius's vengeance, however, was not sated. The Athenians, those upstart defenders of rebellion, remained unpunished. Tales of their audacity festered in the emperor's mind. It was said he commanded a servant to whisper, "Master, remember the Athenians," as he dined, ensuring his rage never cooled. The Persian victory at Lade had been absolute, but it birthed an even greater hunger. Darius, seated in his palace at Persepolis, surveyed maps of the known world. Greece, that fractured land of arrogant city-states, glowed like a jewel just beyond his grasp. He would teach them the cost of defiance. Shipyards across the empire hummed anew, forging another fleet. Envoys sped to subject kingdoms, demanding troops and tribute. The Persians would not stop at Asia Minor. They would cross the Aegean, trample Athens into the earth, and hang its leaders from the walls of the Acropolis. Yet even in despair, embers of resistance smoldered. Survivors of Miletus, scattered across the Greek world, carried tales of Persian cruelty. In Athens, the loss of half its fleet stung, but so did the shame of abandonment. The city buzzed with debates, anger, and a hardening resolve. The Persians had underestimated the Greeks, once a mistake they would not repeat. Darius's wrath had reshaped the world, but it had also ignited a fire. The Greeks, though battered, were not broken. As Persian envoys demanded earth and water symbols of submission from mainland city-states, Sparta hurled them into a well, snarling. Find them there. Athens, defiant, prepared for war. The drums of retribution grew louder, echoing across mountains and seas. The conquest of Asia Minor was complete, but the true war, the war for the soul of the West, had only just begun. Darius's empire would soon learn. To break a Greek was to forge a legend.